Hello, my name is Kay. Welcome to Art Book Nook. Here I love to share my collection of art and craft books. In this video we're going to explore the latest book from David Bellamy, Watercolour and Beyond. Including this book, can you believe that David has published 21 books in total and created 8 DVDs with APV films, while also teaching painting courses around the world and serving as a consultant for the Leisure Painter magazine. His watercolours are held in many private collections, including those of Sir Chris Bonington, Bill Bryson, Sir David Attenborough and Chris Packham. Quite a pedigree, don't you think? David says, in this book you'll discover a world of inspiration beyond pure watercolour, with over 60 original approaches and exercises. As you can see from these 2 content pages, this book is absolutely jam-packed with information, so to save you from being overloaded, I thought it best to split this book review into 4 parts, and this is part 4, Fresh Directions, Interpretation and Alteration. And people are led to believe that you cannot change or rescue a watercolour if you make a mistake, but David says this isn't true. And in this episode we're going to look at David's tips and tricks to help you rescue what you consider to be a failed painting, and we also look at Beyond Wall Art. David will give you several ideas for how to display and how to use your paintings besides just hanging them in a frame on a wall. So let's have a look, shall we? A few scenes begin with a perfect composition. So before David moves on to showing you how to rescue a watercolour, he illustrates how he approaches composition and highlights some key points for you to focus on, using his painting Winter Barn as an example. This piece is a mixed media work combining both watercolour and gouache. David has created 2 different paintings here to show how a scene can be reinterpreted. In the first, on the left, he explains the compositional changes he made and the techniques he used to capture the ghostly ridge in the distance, the more dynamic ridge in the midground, and the texture in the foreground. I've enlarged David's reference photo top right so you can compare his creative decisions to the original view below. I should apologise for the poor quality of the photograph. It's very small in the book and doesn't enlarge very well, but I felt it was important to include it for your comparison. In the second painting, David takes a much looser approach, once again taking us through his choices and techniques. I really love this painting. I think it's beautiful. On the previous pages, we looked at how David reinterprets entire scenes, but sometimes it's the small details that make all the difference. In his painting of the old barn, David illustrates how he suggested the corrugated iron roof. By painting directly onto corrugated cardboard and stamping it onto the watercolour paper, he created a texture that looks really true to life. It's a simple method yet very effective, don't you think? In this example, David shows how he creates realistic features using found objects combined with watercolour ground, giving the illusion of the real thing. He worked on a heavyweight watercolour paper to take the medium, and for the fishing net he used a small piece of plastic netting pressed into the surface. It's a clever way, isn't it, of bringing texture and authenticity into a painting. Here David demonstrates how altering the lighting in a scene can completely change the mood. On the left-hand page you'll see a photograph of the original view, and below that David's interpretation, bathed in golden light. It's a really good example, isn't it, of how creative choices with light can transform a subject. Look how David has cleverly transformed a flat dull grey day into a sunlit scene. He painted it as though it was bathed in sunlight and illustrates how he created the shafts of light by lifting paint with a damp sponge. The rough texture in the foreground was achieved using sea salt. Different sizes of crystals give different effects. A really good exercise is to experiment in your sketchbook with various washes and types of salt, building your own little library of textures to refer to later. In this painting, David used a candle for a wax resist to create the sparkling light across the water, and schminky coarse paste to give the rough texture in the foreground. I'm really impressed with how he's rendered the sky. He also provides detailed instructions so you can try these techniques for yourself. Wow, this is impressive, isn't it? This double-page spread is only slightly larger than David's original painting, Grand Canyon at Yellowstone. You really get to see his brushstrokes in all their detail. We've seen how David changes what he sees before him when he begins painting. Now he shares his methods for improving flaws and rescuing mistakes in watercolour. On the left-hand page, he rescued Misty Track by adding more colour and creating a more interesting foreground. In the painting of the farm on the right, David made the farm building more of a focus by increasing the contrast between it and the trees behind, while once again adding more interest to the foreground. As David neared completion of this painting, he wasn't happy with the middle distance moorland, where he had used a candle for wax resist. He wanted to darken this area to give it more strength, but of course watercolour won't adhere to wax. To see how David overcame this challenge, I've included links in the description below as to where you can buy a copy of this wonderful book. Even with careful planning, it's not uncommon for a finished painting to have an element in it that you want to remove. David wasn't happy with the gate between the two trees. Watercolour can be reactivated when wet, so paint can often be lifted out, unless of course you've used staining colours. With care, David gently removed the gate using a damp sponge and paper tissue. David has used this technique to rescue many paintings from oblivion. Here David explains how he's improved paintings by simply cropping them to enhance the composition, and he provides two lovely examples to illustrate this. Most artists eventually find themselves with an ever-growing collection of paintings tucked away in drawers, which can feel quite discouraging. David shares several ideas for how you can share your artwork. I particularly love the delicate colours in David's painting of a steam train, and how he's captured the mist and steam. It's really atmospheric. Over time, family events can easily be forgotten, but creating an art project to record them can bring family history to life for future generations. David decided to illustrate some of the more interesting events from his own family history. With his granddaughters in mind, he depicted his grandfather's experiences in the Boer War of 1901, incorporating collage, maps, photographs, diagrams and of course text. Here is another example of a very personal project from David, where he's journalled memories and experiences from his travels. Notice his handwritten notes, such a lovely touch. In these digital times, I think this is especially worthwhile. It reminds me of when one of my school friends married in 1983 and went to live abroad. There were no mobile phones back then, and landline calls were difficult, so she would write me long, beautiful letters describing her surroundings and what she was doing. I still have those letters today, and they're such a joy to read every now and then. Have you thought about enhancing your sketchbooks? David often does this. He loves maps, and he'll leave pages clear so he can add maps of his route, along with leaflets, tickets and photographs later. It makes his sketchbook feel like a complete record of his journey. One genre David particularly enjoys is recreating history. He sees it as a fascinating challenge. His approach begins with research, reading about the location, studying old black and white photographs, and then sketching out a composition before he finally tackles the finished piece. Well, that brings us to the end of part 4 and the conclusion of David's incredible book. In this final episode, David showed us that watercolour paintings don't need to be abandoned if they don't go to plan. Instead, with imagination and the right techniques, they can be reinterpreted, altered and even rescued. He's shared clever ways to improve composition, fix mistakes and add new energy to a piece, along with inspiring ideas for giving our artwork a life beyond the drawer, from journaling and recording family history to creating personal projects that preserve our memories. I think that's such an encouraging message to take away, that every painting, even the ones we might think of as failures, can hold potential and purpose. If you've not already seen them, I've put links in the description below to parts 1, 2 and 3, together with more information about David Bellamy and links to his social media pages. This book is a real treasure for anyone who loves watercolour, and if you've been inspired by what you've seen here, you'll find so much more inside David's book. It's a resource you'll turn to again and again, and I think every watercolour artist will find something valuable within its pages. I've put links to where you can treat yourself and buy your own copy of this book in the description below. Publishers nowadays only actually print a limited number of books, so don't miss out. Make sure you get hold of your own copy. I hope you found this review helpful. If you did, please give the video a like. It really helps YouTube share it with others who enjoy art books too. I post a new art book review every week, so if you'd like to see more, do consider subscribing. I truly appreciate it. If you found the review helpful, please feel free to leave a comment below. I reply to every one. And if there's an art book you'd like me to feature, just let me know. I'll do my best to review it for you. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, happy painting.